Hello, and thanks for joining us on a special edition of Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Tonight is the latest in our series, WTTW News, A Safer City. Every Monday in July and August, we're devoting our entire program to the issues of public and community safety. We'll also be prioritizing public safety in our online coverage as well, including at WTTW.com/safercity.
Tonight, a deep dive into the impact of domestic violence on home life. Here's what we're looking at. Warning signs of domestic violence, what you should be on the lookout for, and what kind of resources are available.
Plus, how local lawmakers are strengthening domestic violence laws.
Like, it's filled with so much love from me to whomever is going to receive this.
And meet a local woman providing essentials to women in need. All that right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors. Chicago Tonight's coverage of public safety is supported by the Su Ling Jin Charitable Foundation Initiative for Reducing Violence in Chicago.
An estimated 1 in 5 homicide victims are killed by an intimate partner. That's according to figures from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Illinois lawmakers are hoping updates to some domestic violence laws will lower that grim statistic and help survivors of abuse. And joining us now to talk about strengthening the state's domestic violence laws are State Representative Joyce Mason, a Democrat who represents Gurnee, and she is a survivor of domestic violence and sits on the board of directors of A Safe Place Lake County Crisis Center. We also invited Republican lawmakers from both the Illinois House and Senate, but they declined tonight. Representative Mason, we're glad that you are joining us from near Gurnee tonight. So as a victim of domestic violence yourself, what are the recent updates to Illinois law that offer the most protection to survivors?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. You know, the General Assembly has been doing a lot of work in this space. And, you know, I think increasingly so since COVID brought a lot of light to the domestic violence crisis that we're in. You know, people were trapped at home with their abusers. And so we realized that there was a whole lot of extra work to be done. You know, some of the things that we've been doing have been surrounding technology. So, for example, one bill that we passed allows for some residents of Illinois, those who live in counties with 250,000 or greater population, to file for orders of protection online and get an online hearing. And that's really important because for so many people, either they're afraid to leave their home because of their abuser, or, you know, they can't take off of work, they'll lose their jobs. So this is a great stride that we've made. I'd like to see it expanded statewide, but we'll be working on that. Some other things.
I wanted to ask you, just if we could expand on that a bit. So it's only in counties of 250,000 or more. Is it just because it's more difficult in more rural counties to be able to get the technology working?
Yeah, I think there was pushback because some of the more rural counties were worried about cost, and, you know, they don't have the big staffs to implement the technology. But unfortunately, some of those rural areas where it takes literally hours to get to the nearest courthouse, that's where they need it the most. So, you know, we'll be focusing on expanding that. I think once we have more established programs in the bigger cities, it will be easier to roll out in those rural areas.
Tell me about some of the holes that still exist with the order of protection laws in Illinois. Currently, someone that has an order of protection against them, they have to revoke their FOID card, although according to most recent data, 74% of people in Illinois who are supposed to have their FOID cards revoked have not yet. And we've seen this in so many other instances. Is this an issue of manpower at the Illinois State Police, of actually going in and taking guns and FOID cards?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. So one, when somebody goes in and gets an order of protection, at first it's an emergency order of protection. So the abuser isn't there. The victim goes in, tells a judge what happened. If the judge believes they're in imminent danger, they give them an emergency order of protection. So at that point, the abuser doesn't have their day in court, so to speak. So they wait until, I don't remember if it's 14 or 30 days. I think it's about 14 days till they go back for a hearing with the victim and the abuser. And at that point, if the judge orders a plenary order of protection, at that point, that's where the FOID card gets revoked. And under the law, they're supposed to also give their weapons to another FOID card holder, or they're supposed to be collected. There's a lot of legal debate right now. But some of the pushback is one, concerns for the safety of officers going to somebody's door who's dangerous to collect weapons. Although, think about how the victim feels if the officers are afraid to go. Two, manpower, because there are, countless weapons out there that should have been collected that haven't been. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah,
And
and
three,
this is. I'm sorry. I'm
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. I'm just because we've
No,
seen
no,
that
no.
issue crop up in so many different instances. But
Yeah.
the Illinois House did pass a red flag law that would allow law enforcement to seize guns immediately in cases of domestic abuse. Is that something that's being considered now in the Senate, and does that have a chance of passing in that chamber?
Yeah, it got delayed in the Senate, and my hope is that they'll bring it back during veto session in October and be able to pass it. I know it's a difficult bill to pass just because there is some pushback. The other thing that I was going to mention is law enforcement is concerned about storing those weapons once they collect them. They need the space and the proper facilities to be able to store them. But I'm confident that the General Assembly and the Senate can work it out so that we can protect the victims. We need to put that first before anything else. We have to find a way.
All right, I want to bring up another bill that you sponsored that passed. So it would add electronic communications to no contact orders of protection, so texts and emails and things like that. How big a problem has this been for victims of domestic abuse? They're not going to see them in person, but perhaps they're still going to be inundated with communications.
Yeah, it is a big problem. And, previously, when the laws were originally written, we didn't have all of these electronic things, right? And once we did, it was kind of up to the judge to remember to add in, oh, yeah, that also includes emails, it also includes Facebook, but they didn't always. So this law includes all electronic communications. And it's important because abusers can not only harass their victims, but they can also threaten them. And, oftentimes you would see victims being threatened and withdrawing their orders of protection and going back to an unsafe situation. So this really helps to really cut off that communication, cut off the fear and the threats from an abuser, and keep victims safer.
We only have a few seconds left, but
Yeah.
I think you tend to see this a lot where you have victims that do go back to their abusers, and people might ask them, well, if this person is so bad, why do you go back? What is your message to people that question those things?
Yeah, it's a horrible question, and one that, I mean, it's natural to cross your mind. But as a survivor myself, I mean, I know that domestic violence affects smart people, wealthy people, people of all socioeconomic backgrounds. And so we often assume that, it's a poverty issue, it's a race issue. But really, abusers have a way of looking at what's most important to a victim. Threatening children. If you leave, I'm going to do something to your children. So even the strongest people, out of fear for their own children, fear for their own well-being, financial reasons, there's
Right.
significant financial abuse. There are so many reasons why.
Abusers,
And then we have our whole,
I
sorry.
was just going to say, I'm sorry, we're out of time, Representative. Abusers
Oh,
tend to
thank
have all
you.
kinds of tools of manipulation in these situations. We really appreciate you sharing this with us today, State Representative Joyce Mason from the Illinois General Assembly. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for your time.
You bet. And up next, resources for domestic violence survivors. So please stay with us.
Incidents of domestic violence surged by more than 30% across the country when the COVID pandemic first hit. It's not only highlighted the need for better legal protection for survivors, as we just learned, but also the need for creating a better network of care in cases of abuse. Dozens of organizations in Chicago are working to address these needs while getting to the root causes. Joining us now to discuss their work are a few of those groups. Stephanie Love Patterson, Executive Director at Connections for Abused Women and Their Children. Shireen Alamzadeh, co-founder and co-director of Healing to Action. Danielle Rafado, Managing Director of the Family Law and Protective Orders Division at Ascend Justice. And Rebecca Weininger, Director of Domestic Violence Law Practice at North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Shireen, let's come to you first, please. How common is it for someone to experience domestic violence and find it difficult to talk about it or to be afraid to bring it up?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I would say that it's extremely common, if not a universal experience, for it to be difficult for a survivor of domestic violence to come forward and experience when they've experienced it. I think it's very important at the outset to frame this not as an individual problem or a problem that a survivor has to figure out on their own, but as a community problem that we're all accountable to creating avenues of support for survivors. If they don't feel like they can come forward and share with somebody that they trust in their community what has happened to them, or if there's not a clear understanding of what a healthy relationship looks like in their community that is shared by everyone, it's really impossible for a survivor to come forward. So I think at Healing to Action and all the other organizations that we'll be hearing from in this conversation, we're really working to create a community response. Healing to Action is chairing the Gender-Based Violence Task Force, which is working on this issue, and our survivor leaders are also trying to build a powerful network of peer support for survivors of domestic violence to come forward and to access trusted points of contact in their communities.
We recently saw the case of a Little Village mother, Karina Gonzalez, and her daughter fatally shot in their home. 2 weeks before that murder, Gonzalez had filed an order of protection against her husband after he threatened to kill her. Stephanie, what do you believe went wrong in this situation?
I think the accountability piece is what went wrong. So, as you said, she did all of those things, that people say, well, why don't you just leave? Why don't you call the police? Why don't you get an order of protection? She did that, but without any type of enforcement of those remedies in the order of protection, it's just a piece of paper, honestly. And so most of us, all of us who are working in this field, understand that sometimes power and control dynamics on the part of persons who cause harm are such that they don't care that there's a piece of paper that says that. And so from what I understand in the story, they just went back home and things kind of continued as usual, where he did not surrender his gun. He did not surrender his FOID card, continued to abuse her, and then unfortunately and ultimately ended up killing his wife, daughter, and shooting his son. And so there really has to be, I'm excited about the piece of legislation that's put forward to have that immediate sort of accountability and surrendering of those weapons once it's granted in that order of
And of course, we just heard from the state representative on some of the challenges in actually serving revocation of a FOID card, collecting a weapon. A bill in General Assembly would give the police authority to immediately remove a gun after that order of protection is issued and give the police department 48 hours to do it. Rebecca, would a bill like this have helped Gonzalez and her family?
The truth is that every single layer of protection that we can wrap around a survivor helps a survivor. And I think it's what all of us can agree on, that the less that we put in a survivor's way whether it's her community embracing her coming forward and saying that I'm a survivor, whether it's destigmatizing the courts and legal action so that by the time she decides that she is going to move herself toward her own independence, she is not scared of coming to see an attorney. She's not scared of the court system, whether it's empowering law enforcement to remove firearms. Any layer of protection that we can wrap around survivors is important, an incredibly important step that we can take. And there isn't any member of the community that North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic works with that we don't say, you can help and you can partner with us to make our communities safer. If you want to make if you want to decrease the accountability, if you want to decrease the amount of mass shootings, then you need to work with us to decrease domestic violence, because behind every mass shooting is a story of domestic violence. If you want to have a positive impact on the economy, you need to work with us to decrease domestic violence, because domestic violence has a direct impact on the economy. There isn't any part of our community that shouldn't be partnering together and holding hands, busting down silos that have historically separated each one of our agencies to work together to take down the things that put barriers between survivors and getting them help, and putting distance between themselves and abusers.
Danielle,
Can I just add? Oh, I'm sorry.
So, well, I want to get Danielle in here briefly, and then, of course, we'll come back to you as well, Stephanie. But Danielle, what kind of protections are already available for women who are experiencing domestic violence? What are some of their options?
Absolutely. So one of the options that the survivor that you mentioned did come and do is there are different types of protective orders, which how they're supposed to work is it's a court order that's intended to keep someone safe, to keep the person who has been harming them often away from them, and to do things like prohibit them from having access to, say, dangerous weapons. There also is the possibility of pursuing criminal charges through the criminal system. There are other legal avenues, like if the two parties have children in common, maybe filing a divorce or filing a parentage case might help iron out some issues that could cause problems in the future. However, the legal system is only part of the process. And so it's really important when we work with survivors to not act as if one thing is going to solve the issue of domestic violence, or if taking one action is going to work for everyone. And so we work with our clients and provide links to other providers, counseling. We do safety planning. We try to help our clients access available financial resources, so that we're really looking at it for from a wider lens than just the legal system.
Shireen, this summer your team has been leading survivor-led dialogue workshops in the community. What do some of those conversations look like?
So those conversations are survivors speaking from their own expertise, having gone through the experience of leaving abusive relationships. But it's also trying to really get at the heart of what, really get at the heart of some of these issues. So what are traditional gender roles? What is our understanding of consent? What is our understanding of what a healthy relationship should look like? And what is our vision for what survivor-led justice should look like? And our leaders are coming from all different walks of life. They represent so many different communities. And they're going and talking to people in the community, people who maybe have never had this conversation before, people for whom this is a very uncomfortable conversation, but really trying to start to open up those dialogues again, so that when a survivor does feel like they want to come forward, there's somebody to come forward to, somebody that they trust and they know who can support them through the process, along with all of the resources that we've already been hearing about from some of my colleagues here tonight. So we're very excited.
Well, and sorry, I just wanted to get one more question in because we've got about 45 seconds left. Stephanie, your organization started Chicago's first 24-hour domestic violence shelter and 24-hour hotline some years ago. How important have these resources proven to be?
These resources are literally life-saving, and I don't just say that lightly. They really are life-saving. To be around for the number of years that we've been at CAWC, to be able to respond to victims and survivors of domestic violence, sometimes at the most vulnerable, dangerous times, in their relationship has just been, pivotal. Before CAWC came into being, there really weren't any laws. There really weren't very many people to pick up to answer a phone to provide assistance.
Okay, and we're going to share a number with folks in just a second. Unfortunately, we are out of time. My thanks to our panelists, Stephanie Love Patterson, Shireen Alamzada, Danielle Rafato, and Rebecca Weininger. Thanks to all of you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
And if you or someone you know needs help, you can call Illinois' Domestic Violence Helpline at 1-877-863-6338. Up next, delivering essentials to women in need, one purse at a time. What does justice for Emmett Till look like for you?
Justice for, in our sense, is to serve humanity.
Black storytelling is a huge part of our culture, and so we wanted to make sure we gave young writers the opportunity to share their stories.
I think it's important that people feel empowered and find a light within themselves, whether it's art or not, but if it can be sparked with an idea, I think that's the type of things that change the world.
People experiencing domestic violence are often leaving dangerous situations quickly and are unable to pack any essentials with them. Maria Castro is working to fill that gap by providing everyday necessities plus a touch of inspiration to women in need. Her organization, Love Purse, also helps women struggling with housing insecurity, substance abuse, and human trafficking. Producer Erica Gunderson brought us this story last year, and here's another look.
I think all of us know that before we walk out the door, we grab our purse, right?
For many women, a purse is more than where they carry their wallet and keys. It's a life kit.
And in that purse, it could be anything from your kids' photos, maybe a trinket that they gave you, a rosary. And so when you have to leave sometimes in the middle of the night because of danger and you just run out, you have nothing, how do you pick up the pieces? How do you get back that purse that meant so much to you?
A little more than a year ago, a chat with a friend sent Maria Castro on an errand that turned into a movement.
A very dear friend of mine is the founder of a safe haven in Chicago.
A safe haven is a very holistic, comprehensive model to help address the root causes of poverty and homelessness.
And so during pandemic, she and I were having a conversation about how were things going and what's going on. And she told me that they were having trouble getting toiletries that the women could individually have because they could no longer share. So she was kind of in a quandary and said, let's figure this out.
Castro's solution was simple. To get the items to a safe haven quickly, she just went out and bought the toiletries herself. Sitting in her living room, surrounded by shopping bags full of shampoo and toothpaste, she says inspiration struck.
I thought, I can't give a woman a plastic bag filled with these toiletries. Like, how insensitive would that be? So I decided to go onto Amazon. And so I ordered purses. I wrote a note of inspiration, put one in each of the purses, and then it just dawned on me, like, it's filled with so much love from me to whomever is going to receive this. It's a love purse.
I immediately embraced it and loved it. To the women that are here at a safe haven that are here for so many different reasons. Again, some because of job loss, some due to domestic violence, some coming out of prison. Even some women that are military veterans, are here, and the smiles on their faces, when they got a purse filled with all these amazing essentials, I think is truly lives up to its name. I mean, it's love, right?
That's when Castro realized donating purses filled with not just necessities, but also a bit of encouragement, is a mission that anyone wanting to help women in need could carry out.
I put it out on social media, and that was it. Like, the floodgates opened. I was getting calls from people saying, oh my God, this is great. It really became something that anybody could do so easily, and it wasn't that costly.
Soon, the idea took off across the country and even the globe. Volunteers Castro calls Love Purse's angel ambassadors hold purse stuffing parties and deliver them to social service agencies in their areas.
I had people from Canada, Ontario, that said, can we do this here? Can we duplicate it? Of course. Mexico, Puerto Rico, and we sent some to the Ukraine recently.
Locally, Love Purse partners with agencies like Metropolitan Family Services and Magdalene House Chicago, a residential recovery program for survivors of human trafficking. Executive Director Ida Butler says for women rebuilding their lives after trauma, the purses carry special meaning.
We provide the home for them. We provide the services they need to function, and this may be something that they have not had for years, perhaps, or if ever. Something that's personal, something that's theirs, something that's unique and special to them.
1 year and 6,000 donated purses later, Castro says the flood of help and encouragement Love Purse continues to receive fills her with the desire to keep this mission going.
Like, I want to be able to help as many women as we can. Obviously, the need is there, but at the same time, there's never a lack of donations or people that want to help. It just proves to me that there's so much kindness and so much good out there.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Erica Gunderson.
And you can now buy tickets to the Love Purse annual gala happening October 5th. Find details on that and more on our website about that organization.
And that's our show for this Monday night. Join us again next Monday for the next program in this series. And be sure to follow our ongoing coverage online and join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Why tens of thousands of Illinois residents are being kicked off Medicaid and what they can do about it.
Plus, mystical paintings with a side of surrealism by a Spanish painter whose work is little known in the U.S. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz.
And I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.